Today, I'm speaking with Ashley. She tells me of the two different birth experiences she had while living in the GCC. Her first child was born in a hospital setting where Ashley had her waters ruptured without her consent, which caused her birth to increase faster than she was ready for. Ashley had a moment where she decided not to get an epidural and relied on her faith to get her through the experience and birthed her baby vaginally. By the time Ashley was pregnant with her second child, she attended a birth within the hospital system and was more traumatized by that experience than the birthing mother herself. After that, Ashley found the guidance of a local, wise woman to walk with her throughout the second pregnancy journey and who also had a birth outside of the medical system. In the GCC, it's very difficult to actually birth in this way, so Ashley had to jump through quite a few hoops to ensure that she would be able to get a birth certificate and passport for her child once born. Ashley did have the peaceful birth that she wanted, but had to enter the system in order to get the paperwork, which proved to be quite a journey in and of itself. Have a listen to Ashley's journey into birthing free, even in a country that makes it very, very difficult for women to birth in their power. Hello, Ashley, and welcome to the Free Birthing in Color movement.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good. I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm very, very excited and interested to hear both of your birth stories. So let's get right into it. And the first question that I want to ask you is, what is your ancestry and your lineage?
Okay, so I am what I at least know. I'm Black American. Grew up as far as I know, at least of probably at least three generations I can probably count for, three or four.
Mm.
Grew up in South Carolina, particularly kind of in the Gullah region, so the coastal area. So that's where my family is from. And to that point, all I know beyond that, or at least what I suspect is that we're probably from, I would say, West Africa, maybe Sierra Leone, Senegal. I assume that's where we're coming from because I read this study before how there was a group of folks who left the South Carolina who speak Gullah and they went to Sierra Leone and were able to speak to each other across same lines because of the Creole connection. So that's probably the extent of what I know at this point. But what I know and familiar with is South Carolina.
Wow, that's amazing that they went back from the Gullah area to Sierra Leone and were able to have that connection,
Yeah,
that communication. So there's got to be something in that.
absolutely. There's
Yeah.
something there. Even the foods itself, like red rice,
Hmm.
similar to jollof rice. First time I had jollof rice, I was like, wait a minute, this is my grandma's rice.
Right.
So just all the connections I always find between the foods,
Yeah.
the weaving, the language. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Wow. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a really cool piece of history to know because, sometimes people don't even know that far back, past the three or four generations. It's only one or two. So even getting that bit
yeah.
of information and having the inclination of the West African country, Sierra Leone, is really, really ties it in.
It
For
does. It does. So hopefully I'll be able to figure it out sooner rather than later.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for that. And the
Hey,
second question that I want to ask you is, where does your motherhood journey begin?
so I guess I would have to say, like, I'm kind of, it's funny, growing up as a little girl, I can't say I thought about becoming a mother. I mean, I would probably say I probably play with dolls here and there, but nothing beyond that. I
Hmm.
probably thought about, I want to be a mother with, thought probably first came in high school, but then I would say college is probably where it started. Just because I realized I wanted to have a family. Didn't know when, because I was still in that single life. I was into career kind of thing at one point. But seriously, I became more serious about it when I guess found the love of my life when I thought that he was going to be the one, and I started thinking, can I have a family with this person? So
Hmm.
it's interesting because we initially said, we're gonna as soon as we get married, we're gonna have kids, and then as soon as we got married, we were like, maybe we need to wait a little bit, just to learn how to be married.
Mm.
And then also my father had passed away about a month and a half after we got married, and it was very unexpected. So
Mm.
I needed time to figure out who I was.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so And then I would say this. I thought at one point, this is kind of a plug on some things that medical folks tell you. I was having issues with my menstrual cycles, and of course, at the time where I was in my space, I was trying to seek answers through the medical system, and they didn't give me much other than saying you probably have endometriosis. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
know what that was, didn't understand, whatever. But all I thought was like I couldn't probably have kids one day, or maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. So
Mm-hmm.
as I'm getting closer to the point of wanting to have kids, which is right on the cusp of 2020 pandemic, I I remember going, I had a breakdown. I was crying and I was like, I'm not going to get pregnant. It's not going to work. I just got off and I was on the pill at this time before. I'm not on it now, but back then I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm not going to be able to do it. That's not going to happen. And then lo and behold, I was already pregnant. I just
Oh,
didn't know I was
wow.
pregnant.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so it's very interesting how it kind of came into me. I felt like a very, I would say, intense passion for it, but I thought I couldn't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
But technically, I was already pregnant. I just didn't know that yet. So, and then I found out after the fact when during a dream, like my dad came. He comes to my dreams every once in a while, and he came in and he was smiling. He was happy to see me, and I was like, "Why are you so happy?" Like he wouldn't tell me. He was just happy. And then the next night, he came back in my dream again, so I didn't know why he was there. And then the next day, I took a pregnancy test, and so I was pregnant.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That just gave me whole
Mm-hmm.
chills. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful for him to come in my dreams. So it was amazing. That's how it all came about. So in the midst of the pandemic. So
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's so beautiful.
mm, thank you.
Wow. So then do you want to tell me how that pregnancy journey and experience was for you? With your
Yeah,
faith?
absolutely. Um, so I would say that it was probably one that was, how do I say this? When I found out I was pregnant, I remember being so excited. I was grateful. And then I would probably say not even 10 minutes after that, I was like, oh my God, I'm having a baby. What does that mean? I don't like, what do I do with my body? I'm like, I need a doctor. And all these things were popping in my head.
Mhm.
And I would say that it was interesting because I was also at a point in my life when it comes to, I would say, my health journey.
Mhm.
As I'll probably say, I started trying to think more about my body and my health after my father passed.
Mhm.
He had a stroke. So those things kind of shook me in many ways. So I was always kind of a fan of thinking about the natural path, and like I was always trying to look for those methods. But when it came to pregnancy, I was like, I need a doctor. I don't know what I'm doing. What's going on? Blah blah
Mhm.
blah. So with that being said, I ended up finding a doctor. I live currently in the GCC in the Gulf area, and so I was looking for the doctors, and I was thinking to myself, I need an American doctor. I kind of went back to things that probably didn't they're not reflective of who I was as a person, but I was scared.
Mhm.
I was lost. It was also a state of it was a state of a time where everything was more dark with with the pandemic. So I think
Mhm.
everything just seemed very like lonely. And so with that being said, I was looking for a doctor. I found one American doctor, and I remember as I reflect on it now, when I went to see this doctor, I was very much like, help me, what do I do? I don't know my body. At the time, my husband couldn't come in the room with me because of the pandemic rules.
Right.
And I noticed in myself that I was seeming very dependent on this doctor.
Mm.
I couldn't snap out of it, but I felt the energy of being dependent. Um, so that went on for a couple months or so. But then I found a doula. I looked up doulas and I went through like probably three interviews of them, and then I decided on one. And she was amazing. I felt like she's someone who's all about just please have your information, be more informed about the journey, pregnancy, so then you can feel like you can do this essentially. So I became more empowered. So essentially what's happening is I was seeing this doctor
Mm.
simultaneously I was becoming more knowledgeable about birth,
Mhm.
my body. So then I became more empowered. And then
Mhm.
as I became more empowered, I became to voice myself a little bit more on what I want and what I do not want.
Right.
Once that conversation happened,
Mhm.
once down the line, that's when the doctor revealed herself even more to me.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So it was a matter of I started to share like I think I was saying I want to talk about my birth plan. And when I spoke about it, I was probably like, I think I was about 31-ish weeks pregnant, somewhere around there. And I was like, talking about my birth journey, my birth plan. And she was like, well, we have time for that. But who I am as a person, I was like, yeah, okay. But just so you know, I don't want this. I think I was saying I don't want I said, I want to have a birth. I want to have birth on my own. I said, I do not want to be induced. And she
Mm-hmm.
kind of was like, okay, whatever. And then I also mentioned how I didn't want to be hooked up to any of the IV ports. I don't like them
Mm-hmm.
in general. So I was like,
Yeah.
I definitely don't want something like that while I'm giving birth.
Yeah.
And when I said that to her, that's when things kind of went left field. She was
Mm-hmm.
saying things to me like, well, this is our lifeline to you. I'm not going to let you die. And when she
Oh.
said that, oh my God, at that point in time, I looked at her like she was crazy. And I should give you backstory. I mentioned to you that when I first found out I was pregnant, a lot of fear came over me. One of the fears was that I could die during childbirth. And I think it's because of all the narratives that I was hearing
Mm-hmm.
about Black maternal health in the U.S.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm actually appreciative of you doing this interview and having this platform, is because those are narratives that I only knew.
Yeah.
So then that's what I thought that I could only do. Like it would be that kind of birth, and I could be at risk and all these things. So I'm not erasing these people's stories, right, and these experiences, but that was the only narrative that I had at the time. So I
Exactly.
appreciate this space, by the way. So on that
Mm-hmm.
note, so
Yeah.
now at this point, that's where my mind was. Now, once I became more empowered with the knowledge of birth, then I started to push those fears to the side. So I was
Mm-hmm.
feeling more empowered. And then in this moment, this doctor is bringing me back down.
Yeah.
So I was like, this isn't going to work out at all. So I left that doctor's office feeling like, what do I do now? And I spoke to my doula and I was like, I'm like 31, 32 weeks pregnant. I can't find anyone new. And she's like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Right. So that's what I did. I went and found another doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I did end up finding a doctor. She was also Black,
Mm-hmm.
and all about the natural birth process.
Mm-hmm.
In interesting ways. She's an interesting woman actually, because she's a doctor who I would say works in the system, but if you ask her, she does her spares at the time of what she truly believes, it's not that. This is more of her
Okay.
livelihood and
Mm.
things of that nature. So, anyways, when I went to her, I felt like this is the right place I need to be. She was all about, I'm letting you do whatever it is that you want to do, and you should feel like you know whatever you want to do because you are the one that's in control. That was kind of how that's how she spoke to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I found that person and I started feeling a little bit more like safe in this space of where I was going to give birth. And then what happened after that? So weeks go by. I'm about 38 weeks pregnant, and then I catch COVID with symptoms. Just say
Okay.
that. So I was feeling crappy, feeling horrible. So I pretty much was not doing anything. And my husband caught it as well. So we had a lot of long time together. That was our time to bond before the baby came.
Yeah.
Um, because we can't go to work, all the rules in place at the time. So we were at home. So that allowed for me to, I guess, get some rest. And then I remember the day that I started feeling better. I went to go get retested to see if I was clear of COVID. Those 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
after the fact, I got the results. I was negative. So I was able to go back to the hospital. Um, and then I think that same day, no, it was that same day, that night, felt the energy
Mm-hmm.
to want to just get everything together,
Mm-hmm.
get a bag together, all these different things together. And then that night, I had a sandwich, and then I was like, wait a minute, something's happening. I'm going
Mm.
to later. And that's how it happened. So as soon as I got out of COVID and I felt relief, and that's when my baby decided to come, which I was grateful about because I had zero energy during COVID, like
Okay.
nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I essentially, what happened that night? I was like trying to get my mind together. I was actually getting ready to leave my current job and move on to a new job.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent the email out quickly, let them know I'm going to be resigning because I had to give like a deadline for that.
Yeah.
I was doing my hair. I was all different random things, trying to push through the labor.
Yeah.
And then I had a chance to kind of sleep on and off. It was like late night. And then when I woke up about 8 in the morning, I had somebody to eat, and then that's when things got more real.
Mm-hmm.
I labored at home for 30 hours. no, 24 hours. I labored at home for 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. I think it was mostly it was my mental
Mm-hmm.
capacity. I was just feel like, wait, this is a lot. This is a lot. And I had back labor. I had the back pain, so I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't expecting that either. But I enjoyed being at home. I enjoyed being in my space.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed, yeah, I just enjoyed being in my space. That's what I really appreciated about that time, despite the challenges of labor.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the law here in the GCC country that I'm in the Gulf, we're not allowed to give birth at home. So you have to go to the hospital. So in my mind, that was like, this is the only option. You only go to the hospital. So I labored as long as I could. And then my mucus plug came out, and then I went off to the hospital. Get to the hospital, and actually back up. Going to the hospital was ridiculous because couldn't sit down. I mean, I'm just like, you can't be still, right? So imagine getting in the car with the seatbelt on, all the things. And my husband at one point was sitting, and I was sitting in the front seat, and he was like, "Put your seatbelt on." I gave him the meanest look. You
Yeah.
gotta be kidding me. This is not happening. And it did not happen. So we get to the hospital. I'm like out front, like, I mean, I'm on the ground. I'm doing all these people look like I'm crazy. So I get there, and they get me to a room, and I will say, I'm not a fan of hospital births at this point, but at that time, I will say one of the things that they did was that they had my birth plan in their hands. Like, it was,
Mm.
I at least give them that much. Like, it was like, their little Bible, if you will. They had them out, and I was like, this is interesting. But,
Mm.
so they were trying to honor most of the things that I was looking for at that time. But one of the things that I realized, again, once I learned more down the line, she went to check my cervix, the midwife, and of course, my water broke. But my water broke. She broke my water.
Mhm.
Um, and at that point, I would say the pain definitely increased when I think about it,
Oh.
reflectively.
Mhm.
I remember we were in one room before I had to get to the water birth room. And
Right.
I remember just like trying to move around. I couldn't stay still, couldn't stay still. Now, one of the things I did not want was an epidural. I was like, I
Mm.
don't want it. That was my thing. I don't want an epidural. As my doula, I told my husband, if I said I want one, you tell me no, because I don't want one.
Mhm.
And the reason I didn't want one is because of the medicine. Like, I'm not for strong I'm really not for medicine really anyways, but anything like fentanyl, like all the things that are inside of it,
Yeah.
it's just not for me. So
Yeah.
that was where I was. So now they get ready to take me to the next room. They're waiting to get to the water birth room. And I remember at one point, I just started walking. I'm like, it's ready. I have no shoes on. I'm just walking through the hospital floor. My husband's like, what are you doing? I was like, don't worry about it. And if you know me, I don't like putting my feet on just random grounds. It's just something like floors in different places. So that was a big step for me. But I wasn't that much, you
Mhm.
know, in my element. Like, I'm out.
Yeah.
So I get there, I'm in the water, I'm out the water, I'm moving around, I'm doing all the things. Um, and then at one point it was like, I can't do this anymore. I need the epidural. Um, and I remember at that point, it was interesting. I had to make a really tough decision because I was sitting there saying to myself, like, Ashley, you don't want this. You know what you believe about it. It's just not a part of your beliefs, if you will, and what I value. And
Mm.
but then another part of me is like, I'm in a lot of pain. This is tough. I'm struggling. And I remember my husband was like, listen, like, this isn't what you want. He was like, this is where you are. So what are you gonna do? This is your reality. So what are you gonna do
Mhm.
about it? And I
Mhm.
think in that moment I turned to God for me, and that's when I decided I'm going to just try to push through it. The only way through this is to get through it.
Yeah.
Um, so I made a decision to not get the epidural, and I just turned to more of my faith. I did have the gas. Yeah, what do you call the gas?
Oh,
Yeah, I
the
guess just
nitrous,
gas.
is it? Yeah.
That's yes, exactly that. So I did end up taking that, which it doesn't, and people say it doesn't cut the pain at all, but I think it focused me on something else. So it
Mm.
allowed for me just to stay like in the zone, and I was just
Mhm.
praying to God, like, just give me as much ease as I can.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to think about it. Once I made that decision
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to push forward, I don't really remember the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like it, I think technically it was probably another 3 or so hours, but it felt like maybe an hour when I think about it now.
Mm-hmm.
So now here we go. Now we're going to get ready to go through birth and excuse me, the pushing and all of that. And I remember like I was trying to be as much in control as possible. One of the things I appreciate about that hospital, I will say, was that the midwife, I heard her saying to my husband and my doula, like, okay, she's getting ready to, go through pushing, but she refrained from calling the doctor because she knew that the doctor was super medicalized and would
Okay.
have tried to jump in and do all the things. And she was
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to say anything, so the baby is like about to come out. So
Okay. Yeah.
I at least appreciate that because my doctor, I should have given this, my doctor, the one that I did find there, she ended up having to go home to her country for an emergency, so she was
Mm-hmm.
not there. So it was
Okay.
like the on call person. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah. So then now I'm going through the pushing. I'm up. I'm down. I'm on my side. I'm just moving around, doing all the things to kind of get myself through it. At one point, I think the midwife was trying to encourage me to push, and my husband was trying to encourage me to push. I can see it, push, push. And I was like, stop telling me to push because
Mm-hmm.
it was just I could not focus. And they stopped and then kept it moving. So, but yeah, I remember that pain. I remember just like feeling it, kind of the pressure of it. And I remember that moment was at the Ring of Fire. But when my baby came out, my son came out. Oh my God, I was
Mm-hmm.
so relieved. I was grateful. I was proud of myself because I was really struggling with the idea: should I go for something that I don't want?
Mm.
And I thank God that I was able to push through that
Yeah.
and have the birth that I wanted at that time
Yeah.
for myself. So I breastfed my baby. I didn't have any pitocin added to me. I was able to birth my placenta um, naturally, and I'm grateful for that. I am. I'm grateful for that opportunity. I'm grateful for that birth experience because it set me up for my second birth in many ways that I didn't realize that it would. Um, I would say after that birth, I decided I was going back and forth about the idea of becoming a doula, supporting other women in their birth journey. And after that, I did end up getting trained and did doula. I did doula training a couple months after that, so I became even more knowledgeable. I think I would say at least about birth and all the things. So
Mm-hmm.
it definitely transformed me into a world that I never thought I would be a part of.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful story because like even going through that mental conflict of I want to take the epidural, but also knowing that if you weren't in that situation, you would say no, but then you're in this pain, you're in a weird space, and all this energy is just so different. So
Yeah. And it's available, right? Like,
yeah, and it's readily available. If you say I want it, they'll just be like, all right, cool, let's zip, 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 and
okay.
you'll get it. So it's really
And,
commendable that
mm-hmm.
you like the only way out is to go through it instead of taking the like the side road, the kind of the shortcut
Yes.
and just numbing
Yep.
out of that birth experience. You were able to fully feel and fully go through everything that you had to go through, and you did it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you should be proud of yourself
Yeah.
because in the grand scheme of things, that's not an easy place to birth a baby unmedicated,
It's not.
vaginally in a hospital situation, even if you do have a
Yep.
really like amenable medical midwife. She's still a medical midwife, and you're still in a hospital,
Exactly.
and there's still protocol, and there's
Exactly.
still all of these things that
All the procedures.
yeah
Yep.
that have to be done. So that's a big thing. That's a big deal, really. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I'm excited to hear how that experience spurred you into this next birth experience, because there's
Yes.
like one of two ways that you can go about it. And it's either one, take the route of stepping more fully into your power, like you've done and like you'll explain, or the route of just still kind of submitting into hospital procedure, still giving away your power for your next babes, and not really coming to that realization of like, this is the reality. Like you have either give your power away or stand in your power.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
mhm.
Exactly. Um, should I dive into the next one now, or
Yeah. Oh, first, sorry. How
please?
was
I want to make sure I
the
didn't jump in.
how was the postpartum experience then for you with your son and all of
Oh
that? Because you said
yeah.
you birthed your placenta naturally. Um,
Yes, I did.
and then yeah, so what was like your breastfeeding journey like, and how long did it take for your placenta to come out as well? Do you
You
remember?
know, I don't even remember. I don't think it was long. I don't
Okay.
remember it being very long.
Hmm.
And honestly, if I'm thinking about it, because it's funny the things I think about now, what happened versus
Hmm.
now what I know, because I've known more since then. But
Mm.
they were, pushing down on I remember them pushing down on my stomach, right? We were trying to help it come out. I remember that happening. But I was
Okay.
really so much involved in my baby.
Right.
And so, oh
Okay.
my God, my baby's here. And I'm just like focusing on him and his eyes.
Okay. So it
At
was a
that,
managed, then it was a managed placental birth, but there was no Pitocin to actually get it out that you,
correct.
okay. Okay.
Correct. There was no Pitocin, but I do recall them. If I'm thinking about, they probably were, yeah, trying to push it out and do all those type of things
Right.
like that.
Okay.
Um, so that, and again, I was in the hospital, so they were going to do
Hmm.
certain things like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of my breastfeeding journey, I mean, I was able to breastfeed my son immediately, so that helped. He probably was on me for about an hour ish,
Hmm.
um, and fed very well, latched very, very well. I'm trying to think what else. And then moving forward, I was just say the journey after that. Breastfeeding was fine for me, except the only part that started, not except, the part that became more confusing for me is when he had a tongue tie.
Mm.
So that created some other, not complications, but just other issues there.
Yeah.
Um, and so I had to make an educated, informed decision. I made an informed decision to go ahead and have that snip for him.
Hmm.
Essentially, my husband had a tongue tie when he was a kid. Things that you learn down the road, but he had one as well. So that helped. I would say keep him on latched well, but it's funny because I think the breastfeeding part was the interesting thing was that how it's the what do you call it the ability to surrender to the journey of breastfeeding because my son was one who did a lot of what do you call it when they feed continuously for a long time. What
Oh,
do they
like
call that?
the cluster
What
feeding?
is it? Cluster. That's it. Got the
Yeah.
word cluster feeding. So he was a cluster feeder, like through and through. So my frustration built up. I want to get up. I want to move. I'm stuck to the seat. I can't get up. He needs me every minute. So it was a lot of those moments of like, yes, baby, I'm here for you. And other moments like, I need a minute. I need to get in the shower. Like, so I was dealing with a little bit of obviously the mental part of it again.
Hmm.
And I remember I had I had this thing of formula. Didn't want to use it, but I had it, and I bought it. It was like just in case we need it, like well, in case I can't breast. All the things I didn't quite understand about the physiological process. But I left the formula can like on the ledge, which is near like the kitchen. I can see it every day. So all those moments I'm thinking like I'm frustrated, I would look at that can. I'm like, I'm about to get that formula. And when my friends came over, I was like, why don't you just hide it? I'm like, I can't. I don't know why I won't hide it, but I left it there. And I thank God I never used it. I never had to give my kid formula
Hmm.
because it wasn't a matter of me being able to breastfeed my child, a matter of me realizing this is the process, this is the journey. When he's breastfeeding, you just sit down and you watch a good TV show, you eat a snack, you
Hmm.
listen to an audiobook or podcast, whatever it is. So once I then finally surrendered to that, I would say that it became more easier, right? Because I wasn't trying to control what it's supposed to look like and feel like and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so I would say my breastfeeding journey went well. I breastfed directly. I would say definitely for the full year, but I'm a working mom, so I would pump. But every time I would leave in the morning or when I came home from work, the baby was on the boob.
Yeah.
And that's how I think I was able to keep up with breastfeeding, even though
Mm.
I was a working mom, because if I wasn't at work, he was on me to
Right.
keep it. Because I know that he's the best, what do you call it, the best expressor of the
Hmm.
milk, not the actual device, right? But
Yeah.
due to my lifestyle, I have to use it. So yeah, I fed him for about a year and a half.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and I weaned him off because I personally wanted to because I was pregnant,
Okay.
second child. I was like, I just need a break. And I have a break before I have to do this. So, but yeah, that was. yeah, so postpartum overall went well. Just learning my body. I started steaming during that time, just trying
Mm-hmm.
different things to help my body. I
Mm-hmm.
guess I went back to, I would say, things that I would say probably are ancestral, right? That was, I would say that was part of that, learning more about my body, listening to my body, and
Yeah.
finding different methods to help my body heal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Wow. Wow. So then this second pregnancy, was this a pregnancy that you and your husband had planned, or did it come kind of more as of a surprise like your first one as well?
surprise, surprise.
Okay.
It was not the plan yet. Do we want a second child? Our plan was, yeah, we want a second child, but I'm gonna wait till baby, like my son is like 3, right? That was
Okay.
my thinking.
Yeah.
And then it was, that was my thought. But then it's interesting because then I would say my son was getting ready to turn 1 years old by this point, and my husband and I were talking. Well, maybe we can just have one. I was like,
Mhm.
what if we just had one child? And about a week or so later, God intervened and was like, no, you're pregnant. Idea went away. It was just a moment. I just tried to entertain it for a second, and he was like, nah,
Mm.
shut it down. So that was a surprise, and I have to admit that I was in shock.
Mm.
I can't. I'm not. I can't. I don't want to say I wasn't happy, but I was. It took me about 2 weeks probably to fully accept that I was pregnant again,
Mhm.
because I felt like I was just figuring it out, motherhood and being also working mom and a wife, all these different things,
Mhm.
and I got pregnant again. I was like, okay, I was expecting that. So once I kind of, and I should say this, the birth that I had with my son, although it's what I wanted, it was still traumatizing.
Okay.
And I think it was because of like the fact that it was such a long labor, the fact that I had shifted to a new place, all these different things,
Mhm.
the things that I didn't realize played a toll on me, they did. And I remember when we left the hospital, that I left early from the hospital. Not, like I was supposed to stay like into that next night, and I left like by the afternoon. And
Mhm.
but even when we left, I remember I was in the car just crying. Like
Mhm.
I couldn't stop crying. I'm sitting next to my son. Every car that drove by, every light that hit at my, everything was on overload, right? And it was
Mhm.
just, I was going crazy.
Mhm.
And I couldn't stop crying. My husband was like, listen, you just birthed a baby. Like maybe it's okay. This is what you're naturally going to be doing. And I remember when I got home is when I felt relief. Like I was
Okay.
like, oh, we're home. We're home.
Mhm.
I just felt relief there. So with that being said, I don't think I was ready yet to have another baby because I was
Okay.
still processing, I think, just
Mhm.
birth and motherhood in general.
Mhm.
Um, so with that being said, and it's interesting, I found out I was pregnant, and then about a week after that, I did another interview for another, you know, channel. So I was able to talk about that birth, which I thought was therapeutic to talk
Okay.
about it.
Yeah.
So I think that also helped me kind of accept,
Mm.
that okay, I'm pregnant again. All right, girl, you got this.
Mhm.
So sorry. So with that being said, um, I started feeling like I think I want to birth this baby at home. And I
Mm.
should probably mention that my doula, um, she free birthed her second baby. So she
Ah.
told me this when
Ah.
I was under her, right?
Mhm.
And when she told me this, I was like, you did what? You did what,
Mm.
huh? And I was like, that's amazing. And I remember turning to my husband, we left one of our sessions with her. This is when I was pregnant with my son. And I was like, I mean, that's like pretty bad. Wait, I don't know if I can curse. I'm so sorry. Can I curse
Yeah, yeah, go
on this
for it.
shit? Oh, okay, good. But I was like, that's pretty bad. Yeah. So I was like, what if I could do that? And I was like, I don't know if I ever could. I don't know. We kind of just like let it ride out, right?
Mhm.
So it was something that I admired about her, that she did that.
Mhm.
But I wasn't at that space at that time. I was like, there's no way I could do that, but it sounds amazing. So
Mhm.
now here I am pregnant with a second baby, just finding out. And I'm like, what if I did it at home? I don't know. And my doula did it here in the Gulf area as well.
Okay.
So I knew it could be done
Yeah.
despite the law, right? But
Yeah.
I didn't have any idea of how to. So the thought came in my mind, and I probably about a week after that, I messaged her and I said, hey, I'm pregnant. And then I was, oh, great. And then I said, so I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but I'm thinking about it,
Mhm.
birthing, and she was like, "Listen, you know, if this is what you want to do," and she's like, "You know, it's not for everyone, but if this is what you feel in your heart," she kind of encouraged me in that way, right? So I brought it to my husband. I was like, "What if I did it? What if he did it?" And he was like, "Listen, I'll support you with whatever you want." And he's also really pro on like anything that's natural. He's
Mm-hmm.
in alignment with me on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so it was just a thought. So now fast forward, I'm in the doula work, and I have a client that I'm going to support in the hospital here. This is my first client
Okay.
supporting someone. So this is about 3 months after, about 3 months pregnant. That experience, witnessing that birth, it was an overly medicalized birth. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I realized how medicalized it could get. Like I learned about all the medical things through my doula program, all the things, all the interventions and all the things that happen. I learned about that. I didn't experience all of that in my own birth. I did experience
Okay.
some things, yes, but not to the extent of what I read about.
Mm.
This birth that I witnessed, I felt like I saw almost everything textbook, if you will, right, in terms of the medical intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I still try to support this mother as best as I could, in the day, you know, as a doula, you're not, and in the hospital, what
Yeah.
more can you really do?
Yeah.
So with that being said, witnessing that was a lot for me. Um, it was traumatizing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pregnant. I remember at one point during the birth, um, I think I had like she had a moment with her husband, and I went to the side. And I remember just like having a moment where I thought it was me in that space, and I'm holding my, you know, my child at the time, and
Yeah.
I remember like feeling so eerie, so uncomfortable, so like unsafe, all these things. I had to actually snap out of it. This is not your birth. Snap out of it. This
Wow.
is not your birth. Because it was just like one of those things. It was just I couldn't believe what I was witnessing.
Mm.
So with that being said, after that, I came home after that birth, and I said my husband, I was like, listen, I got all the confirmation I need. I'm free birthing this baby. I don't want to be in any hospital. I just can't do it. I cannot do it.
Wow.
Um, so that right there is when I made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So then it became down like, okay, how do I do it? So I did have a side note, the doula was also a wise woman. I think you actually know her. I'm not going to bring names into this now, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
talk
I
later.
think I
But
do.
she's,
The more you speak of her,
I
I
think
think I know who she is. So I'll ask you after we're
she
recording.
asked me after, yeah, excellent. So, so she's doula slash wise woman, all the other things. So I was
Mhm.
able to then, I guess, she started to support me in that way instead.
Okay.
So I was able to just, we talked more about what I appreciated with talking with her was that it was all about trying to just dismantle the whatever fears, dismantle whatever made me think I didn't have enough power to do this, or whatever anything that may have thought what control I did or did not have. It was we worked through all of that.
Right. Okay.
Um, so we talked about that. We also spoke about just like what does that look like being in the Gulf area, and what does that mean for how we could do this, right? So we talked about
Mm-hmm.
those things too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just more about I think it's a therapy mental breakdown
Yeah.
in my journey throughout that pregnancy. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of going to the hospital for prenatal visits and all of that good stuff, good stuff, all of that stuff, you have to still be somewhat. This is the part that I think is very, very unique. I'm not for being in the system, but where I live, you kind of somewhat have to be. So you got to figure out a way to play it.
Mm.
And that was that's the difficult part of it. So prenatal visits, I think I remember the one I went to just to go get my confirmation of like the birth. Because I think that's what it was. I needed it because here there's like COVID. They had it at one time. What do you call it? Like mandates for vaccines and stuff like that. So
Oh,
if you
yeah.
say you're pregnant, then you have to get like the proof. Like, no, I don't have to get this. So I had to go take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went, I had to get confirmed. I remember, I think at this point I was already like a month or so pregnant. I remember the doctor. I just went to go see a doctor, and I remember the doctor freaking out, like, "Oh my god, you're this many weeks. Okay, you have done this. You've done that. You're taking this test." I was like, "Wow, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. I'm good." Like it was just, she was freaking out, and isn't that usually the other way around? Like in this case, but
Mm-hmm.
whatever. It was one of those things. I was just like, let me get what I need out of this and go. So that's
Yeah.
what I did. Um, in terms of going into prenatal visits, you kind of have to still show yourself in some kind of way. You can't just pop up later down. And I should also mention this: in order, the stipulation here of the law is that you're not allowed to give birth. No, you're not allowed to have someone medically assist you at home for birth. So like no midwives, nothing like that could happen at home.
Mm-hmm.
So they say that so that way you're not giving birth at home, because they wouldn't imagine someone would give birth without a medical person around, right?
Right.
Um, but the other law part of this is that in order to get birth certificates, you got to go to the hospital to get that.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's the other catch. And
yeah.
I cannot have a birth certificate. I have to get my child a passport, and because you can't
Mm-hmm.
leave the country unless you have all that.
Right. Yeah.
So so um so yeah. So now fast forward. Sorry, my kid was crying, and I heard the kid, and
That's
sorry about
okay.
that. I'm sorry, I got distracted.
No, it's
um,
okay.
I was like, oh. Um, so where are we? Okay, so now I'm seeing different. Went to go after seeing a couple doctors here in the area that I live in the city. I decided to go to a different city because I gave birth to my son in one city, but then we moved since then to another. So I
Okay.
went back to that doctor, the one that I said I had a connection with,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to go see her for my prenatal visits every once in a while, just to kind of, you know, show that
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it. But what I appreciated about her, I think this woman's very, very intuitive, because she could look at me, and I didn't say anything to her about my plan because I got to keep it a secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't say anything. But like I would go visit her, and she's like, "Do you want to do a scan? You don't have to." I was like, "Okay, I won't."
Mm-hmm.
Or she'll say things like, "Okay, so you're this week pregnant, so you're supposed to do what is it? The diabetic test, the
Oh,
G,
the GBS or
yeah,
yeah,
no,
GBS.
not
No,
GBS.
no,
No,
it's the
what's the one for the
gestational diabetes one.
diabetes?
Yeah,
That's the
something.
one.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, one of those terms. And so she was like, "So you're that's this week's pregnant. So you should." I said, "So you're supposed to do this." And then she looked at. I didn't say anything. She looked at me. I was like, "Well, you're pretty healthy, right? You don't have to take it if you don't want to." All right, that's a good idea. It was like I didn't say anything to her, but I think she knew what I was doing in some weird
Okay.
way.
Yeah.
So it was more like we really went to go visit her just to catch up. I swear we didn't usually do anything medical wise. We just
Mm-hmm.
kind of chatted and stuff in general. Um, so anyways, I was attending her like just for those visits here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got closer to the birth, I said, listen, I probably need to find someone where I currently live,
Mm-hmm.
because when I show up after, I can't just be like, hey, I'm just popping into this random place. Like they
Yeah.
have at least know me as a patient.
Yeah.
So I ended up trying to find someone. I did not like really any, I mean, not any of them. I'm not, it was just, I found someone, and I stuck with that person. But of course, during that journey of me going there, I think I probably visited this lady twice
Mm-hmm.
before I actually gave birth, because I waited towards the end of the pregnancy at this point.
Okay.
And I went to her, and she was like, "Okay, well, you're O negative, and you need to get the." I'm forgetting all these terms. I'm so sorry. The
Oh, the RH.
anti, yep,
Yeah, the
RH,
antigen. Yeah, the RH factor. All that craziness. BS.
all
Yeah.
all that crazy, all that kind of stuff, right? And so, and
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing, though. So with my first birth, right, I was into the whole, not into it, but I wasn't as knowledgeable as I was then. So did I take it then? I did. When I
Okay.
learned about it later, I was like, oh dang, I don't know if I should have done that, but it is what it is. I've done it. I'm pushing forward.
Yeah.
But to my understanding of that, this is where I feel like the medical system doesn't make any sense, because based on your own procedures, technically that shot I took is for the future child. It wasn't for the current one.
Yeah.
It's for the future child of the blood mixing. So
Mm-hmm.
now here I am, and they're like, well, you didn't take that. You need to take the antigen and blah blah blah. I'm like, well, why would I need to do that if it was for this child?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, but still, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, technically, I did your thing, and you're still telling me I need to do something else. So I pushed back against that. They wanted me to do the whooping cough shot. They wanted me to do something else. Oh, the GBS test. They want me to do that one, right? That's
Yeah.
the things for the bacteria, right? They want
Yeah.
me to do that. I decided against all of that. So of course, I mean, doing those things
Mm-hmm.
that that made them angry. This
Mm-hmm.
doctor, I would say, handled it the best way that she could. But the previous doctor I went to see before her, oh, that woman was like going off on me in the hospital, in the doctor's office, and I left because I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing these
Yeah.
things. So I think at that point, the doctor that I ended up going with, she probably thought something was up because I was refusing like all the things. I think I
Mhm.
would give her like an ultrasound, and that was like the most I would give.
Yeah.
But that was it. So now, fast forward to the birth. So I will say this in terms of my pregnancy, it was like wild-ish within the confines that I live in. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't like remove myself completely, but I would go, may do ultrasounds. I think I did two throughout the whole pregnancy. Just stuff like that. I would do stuff like that just to kind of deal with the system and all. But that was about it.
Yeah, you did what you had to do in order to keep yourself and your pregnancy and your birth plans as safe as possible.
Yes, as safe as possible. Let's just,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly that. Um, so now we're fast forwarding. I'm back at work now. Oh, so I'm an educator, so I was off for the summer, um, and now I'm back at work. So it's interesting actually. This Today is my daughter's birthday,
Oh, no
actually.
way.
So it's a
Happy
year since.
birthday.
Yeah,
Aw.
thank you so much. Something about like this because this is now I'm in the same season. So last year, this time I was back at work and getting myself ready, knew I was probably gonna have a baby soon.
Mm.
But I made an appointment. I had an appointment scheduled because as I get closer, I have to kind of show my face, right? So I made an appointment, and then I think it was, yeah, it was a Sunday. I think I had the appointment, and that Sunday I woke up and did my thing, and all of a sudden I started feeling some pains. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, is this about to happen? 2 weeks prior to that, I had similar pains, lasted for a few hours,
Mm.
and it went away.
Mm.
So I was like, is this the real thing or is this the same thing? So I'm trying to keep pushing myself for it. But I had a doctor's appointment scheduled that same day. So I called to cancel it and I rescheduled it because I was like, I'm definitely not going there today if this is what's happening, right? Because I was like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, what's going on? So I canceled it. And at this point, I went to the grocery store with my husband. And I'm walking around the grocery store, like pausing probably every few minutes, like, wait a minute, give me a second, give me. And I'm like, I don't know if it's labor or not, but I'm gonna keep pushing, I'm keeping moving. So we walked around the grocery store, and then I got back into the car, and we were getting ready to go to another grocery store to get something else. He's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Oh, I'm good, I'm good." And about halfway there, I was like, "Nah, take me home, take me home. I gotta go." So he dropped me off. I went to go take a shower, laid down, and I woke up, and I felt better. And then I just played with my son at this point. Did the dinner thing, did the normal routine, felt little pains here and there, and kept moving. But now we're getting closer to the nighttime, and I would say about 11 o'clock that night. That is when it all intensified at this point.
Mhm.
So we already had an idea of how I wanted it to feel and look in the home. I had like I don't have a tub, but I got a pool, so like so at least wade in some water. Um, I I'm all about lights. Like I don't like bright lights because that can mess up the adrenaline. So I had like kind of dim lights in,
Mhm.
music. I had my equipment for steaming, so I had
Yeah.
that. So my husband pretty much set up all that stuff for me. Once I realized it was like real deal happening, he was like, okay. So he's filling up the pool. He's setting the lights. He's doing all the things for me at this point. And at this time, my son is sleeping in the room next door, and where we live, a lot of us have nannies, and my nanny was sleeping as well. But she was also on standby, knowing that this could be happening. And when I say that it was one of the most interesting experiences because I knew this is what I wanted to do, and then once it started, I felt peace. I wasn't fearful of anything. I felt like I knew exactly what my body was doing. But then at one point, when the pain came back, I was like, wait a minute, can you do
Mm.
this?
Mm.
Are you sure you can do this? I think you forgot about this part. you know, like those things. So, but I remember feeling like I had no desire to go anywhere. Like I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted to be right there. The house was quiet, so it's nice. It's serene. It's peaceful. It's all the things that I would want to have in my birth. And then
Yeah.
I had my husband there, and he's supporting me.
Mm.
And I will say, the woman, the wise woman, her plan was to come, but interesting how things work out. So I did call her a little bit down the line, and she ended up. She's like, okay, I'm coming. I'll come and just be there, be there for you. During that time though, labor was moving. I was listening to my body. I was going to steam. I sat on the toilet quite a lot because I felt the most open, right? My hips were most open. I was on the bed. I was in the water. I was moving around. I was just doing what I wanted to do. No one's telling me what to do, which I think is interesting, or guiding me on what they think might be good for me in that moment, right? So it was really just me, and my husband is just, bless him, he's just, all right, where do you need me? What do you need? That's pretty much it. So all this is happening, and at some point, I'm telling myself, "Oh my God, can I do this? Okay, can I do this? Can I do this?" And he's like, "You're doing it. You're doing it." I'm like, "Okay, okay." I remember at one point I stopped myself. I was in the bathroom. I looked in the mirror, and I was just watching myself. And I remember saying to myself, "Girl, can you do this? Okay, you're gonna do this, but can you do this? I'm going to do this." And I didn't tell. I should say I didn't. I probably told like maybe two of my friends. I didn't tell my mom about it because she would have been like, "What the hell are you doing?" She didn't tell any family members or anything like that. So there's something I couldn't like turn to anyone else, right? For like some support or anything. So anyway, so in that point, it was about me trying to convince myself to trust my body, trust myself, and trust this process.
Yeah.
So throughout all of that movement, I remember, I would say, the moment where it was getting, where things were about to go down, right? When baby girl was coming, I went to the bathroom toilet. That was I think my favorite spot, just to kind of open up my legs. And I remember I could literally feel like my baby like descend, like drop down. I could feel it. And I thought that was amazing because I don't remember feeling that the first time. I wasn't medicated, but because I was in a space where I couldn't hear myself fully, I missed that part. So this time I'm feeling it, I'm hearing it, I feel it all. And I remember asking my husband, I think I was like, all right, I said, I feel her. I feel her like she's coming. And it's only been like 3 hours, maybe 2.5, 3 hours. Like, I feel like she's coming. So I go to the bed, and I remember I was kind of feeling the pains. I'm moving a lot. And then I laid down for a second. And I remember like, well, this is a long second. This is a longer second than normal. And I took that rest in just for a little bit. And then all of a sudden I felt the pressure, jumped up, my whole body was like, I did like a flip. I don't know what I did. And now I'm on all fours. I got to all fours. I'm on all fours. And I was like, oh my God, the baby's coming. I'm like, baby's coming. My husband's like, in his head, he's looking at me like, there's no way it's like been 3 hours. What are we talking about here? And it's funny, the things that are happening in my body, I didn't think about the fact that my water hadn't broke yet. I didn't think about mucus plugs. I didn't think about any of that stuff. I just knew in that moment, because I don't remember any of that happening, but I remember in that moment, I was like, my baby is about to come. Tell me right now. So I'm on all fours, and I'm pushing, and then I reached down, and I felt, it felt like a balloon. And I remember him in that moment, I was thinking, my son was looking, and he's like, oh, this isn't the thing. He's confused. I'm touching it in my head. I'm like, the hell? Wait, is this my baby's head? No, it's not my baby's head. I know what this is. It's my sack. Okay, keep going, girl. Like, so my mind was just, I'm just telling myself, this is what's happening. And then my husband's like, no. And I said, no, she's behind this. She is coming with it.
Yeah.
And then he came around, and he's looking, and he was like, I'm pushing. I just want to feel her. I know she's there.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my God, I see her. I'm like, I know. And then I think it was like a few pushes, and then baby girl literally, I don't know if you've seen this clip on IG or not. It's like a image of an elephant. I think they're out in the wild, and this family, people film the elephant giving birth. I don't know if you've seen it. And so the elephant the elephant is giving birth on their own and trying to show the idea of like how we're animals. We just give birth. No one needs to help guide us. And
Yeah.
the baby elephant just slowly drops to the ground. That's how
Oh
it looks
yeah.
in
I've seen it. Yeah.
that one. So we've seen that before. Now my daughter, how does she come out? She just falls to the bed.
Mm.
We laughed about it to this day. Like she just dropped down. And then my husband looking at me and I'm like, I grab her, I pick her up, I just lay down on the bed and I take her and I was just like, oh my God. And my husband looked at me and was like, oh my God.
No.
You just gave birth. And I'm like, I did. I did it right there in that room, my music playing, lights are still dim. You know what I mean? It's quiet. Music playing, but it's still quiet, right? I never felt so much more at peace. I wasn't worried about anything. I wasn't thinking about especially if I told you backstory, right? It's going back to the beginning where I first got pregnant with my son. Like I'm thinking about maternal death and hemorrhaging and all these things. None of that is crossing my mind at this point, right? But I also have the knowledge that I needed to. I should say I did follow like the free birth, we have like a what do you call it, program. So I did that to kind of help me understand more about some things too. So at this point, I didn't feel uneasy because I felt like I had the knowledge that I needed to feel empowered. Yeah. And if I didn't know what was happening, I just felt like this is what trust your body. This makes sense. It's logical, right? Yeah. So with that being said, I'm there on the bed. I'm with my baby. I tried to feed her and she wasn't ready yet. No problem. And then she's just looking at me with her eyes, her big eyes just staring at me. And I'm sorry, I'm just like thinking back on it right now because it's a year ago today. So she fed, and then at this point I'm just laying there. I think my husband gives me a snack, and then my wise woman, she shows up after. So my husband called her maybe like 15 minutes later. I was like, and she's like on the way. And I wasn't thinking about like where she was. It was just more like, if she'd be there, great, and if not, no problem. And that was one of the things that she was big on, was like, listen, like, you don't need me there, right? It's more like hey, I want you there, but I don't need you there. And I accepted that throughout that journey. So I think it happened the way it was supposed to happen, that it was just me and my husband there. Yeah. And I remember when he called her, he was like, baby, she's like, I'll be there soon. He's like, baby's here. She's like, I hear through the phone, what? She's so excited about it. So she gets there and she's just like, I'm so happy for you. And, she was like, I would like to be here. Absolutely. She's like, but this is how it's supposed to be. Like, it's just supposed to be you here, your husband's here. That's all y'all needed, right? I was like, yeah. But she was there just to kind of, I'm glad she did still come because it helped. She would help my husband like clean up, because the whole thing, right, is that now this is the part that gets a little crazy with my story.
Oh, wait, sorry. Before you get into that, was your son awake? Did he see his little sister be born?
No, not be born. He slept through the whole thing. Okay. He saw her after.
Okay.
Yeah.
After.
And he was only a year and a half, so I think he would have been like, what is...
Okay.
He might have been like all over the place, but it was the middle of the night. He was sweet.
True. Okay.
So it kind of worked out in that sense. So and I should mention, in terms of my placenta, I can't remember how long this part was interesting. You asked me earlier how long it takes to birth my placenta. So this one, I think I didn't start trying to birth my placenta for like 30 minutes, 45, somewhere in there, right? That's when I started. That's when I tried to do it. And then when I did that, and she was there by this point, my, friend, she showed up then. So she just kind of said, listen, do you feel like you're ready? I'm like, all right. And if I went down, she was like, you can try to cough and see what happens. And that's what I did. I coughed, I tugged it just a little bit, and then it just came on out. And that was that baby back on me. Like that was pretty much, what was happening. I had a blanket over me and her, and we were just kind of there and we're talking and chatting. And that's the part I thought was amazing. We just kind of sat back and I'm just sitting here holding my baby. I just birthed my baby and we're just talking, laying out, whatever it is. But now, because it was like, the hard part is that was the most beautiful thing. But I also know that I have to get ready to get to the hospital at some point.
Yeah.
Because I have to put on the show, I have to do the process. So I wasn't looking forward to that. But I did enjoy the moment that I had. I was probably there for about 2 to 3 hours before I headed to the hospital. So what we did was, since she was there with my husband, they were able to help clean up, because if they saw all the things there, because I called the ambulance, if they came and saw all this, they'll be like, well, you clearly planned this. You have everything you need. So like that had like the little cloth thing, to protect the bed, all types of things. So they cleaned all that up and just made it look like it wasn't planned, but it started to look somewhat messy. So like I was just cleaning it, right? So they did that to kind of set the stage, if you will.
Yeah.
And then she left. And then my husband called the ambulance.
Okay.
So at that point, that's when the ride got really crazy. Yeah, my birth was all the things I just said, peaceful. It's what I needed. It was therapeutic. It was beautiful. It was natural. It's what needed. And I'm proud that they would do that for my daughter.
Yeah.
Like there's something to share with her. Like, if she decides to also become a mother, inshallah, like then she can
she has
know that this is possible. So I'm very grateful for that. But now the immediate postpartum part was the part that was not as beautiful. So we called the ambulance. They got there, that part was kind of comical, because when they got there, I don't know if they knew exactly what they were walking into. It was 3 men, and they show up and they're like, what happened? I had a baby. And they're just like, okay, I need to get some other reinforcement. They didn't know what to do. They were so confused.
I mean, honestly, for things like that, whenever there should be a specific team of women that are on the ambulance service, so that when somebody calls and says, oh my goodness, I've had my baby at home, they should gather those, 3, 4 women and send them to the house. They should already have knowledge about birth so that they can come in and, obviously this would be in like a perfect world, and they could come in and be like, oh, how are you? Like, have you eaten food?
What do you need?
How are you doing? Yeah, what do you need? Are you warm? But they always send men, and they just have no fucking idea what is going on.
None. They looked at me like I had a third eye, and I was just looking at them like, all right. And they're like, and the baby? I'm like, I like kind of show like the baby, because she was like, I was like, here, and they're like, okay. So the funny part though is that also, because, all right, so in terms of the placenta, one of the tricks, again, to keep the narrative going is that you can't have your if I showed up with having cut a cord or anything like that, that would have been suspicious too. So not to say I wanted it, and technically didn't want to cut it yet, but it was like, if I did that, that'd be a problem, because they need to cut the cord. It's just part of their procedure.
Okay.
That's the other thing. So she is, the cord's long. She's still attached, right? At this point. So that was the other part. So now they come in, the paramedics, and I guess they get to send another guy in, and he's like, okay, so before we go, I need to cut the cord. And we were like, no, you're not going to do that. And he's like, what do you mean I'm not going to do that? That's what I need to do. I was like, no, we called the hospital. They're like, don't do that. So he gets on the phone with the hospital, and the hospital told him, please don't cut the cord. We need to see the cord and blah, blah, blah. So he got the phone and was like, okay, whatever. They told me not to do it, so let's go. So it was just funny back and forth. So we ended up getting up, and this is where I see my son. And that was like early in the morning, and my nanny has him, and he sees us come out the room, and first off, he's like, who are all these men in my house? Because he's like looking around, what the heck is going on? And then we walk out, and I'm holding a baby, and he looks so confused. And then he's like his look, his eyes, like face just lights up. And then he ends up going downstairs, and I come downstairs, and then he sees me. He's like, mommy. He's like, baby. But now that's why I have to leave. I don't want to go anywhere. I
Yeah.
don't want to go anywhere. I just want to be there with my son and my baby and let them bond and us bond and all of that stuff, but I have to go.
Mm.
So that broke my heart. So I'm getting ready to leave, he's crying.
Mm.
And now I'm crying because I'm just like, I don't want to leave my house.
Yeah.
But it's just part of where I live. And yeah, so I get there, get in the ambulance. I've never been in an ambulance before in my life. In the ambulance, I'm holding my baby in the ambulance. And I remember, despite being in this ambulance is not a good place. That's a very dark place to be in my opinion.
Mm.
Despite being in that space, I'm looking out the window, and I remember everything looking so clear.
Mm.
My vision, everything looked so crisp, and the air felt so fresh, which is odd because I live in GCC, and this is August. It is extremely hot here,
Okay.
extremely hot. But I felt cool. Like it was weird. Like I was still on this high from giving birth to her. So I get to the hospital, and the narrative, right, is like, oops, my baby came. Baby came so fast. I didn't even realize. Baby came. That's what I tell them.
Mm-hmm.
So I get there, and the interesting thing about that experience was that when I get there, that's when my hormones kick up. That's when my adrenaline is
Yeah.
up. All the things are up now because
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh no, BP sister, I can't believe this happened to you. Don't worry, you're here now. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
how they're receiving me, and I can't push back. Like, yeah, no, I did this. I'm like, no. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yes, it was challenging. Like, I just gotta keep up the narrative.
Yeah.
And so because of that, again, it's kind of going full circle, right? When I first was pregnant with my son, I'm seeking a doctor because it's like I'm dependent on you. And now I'm in this space where they believe that I'm dependent on them, and I'm scared and nervous about what just happened to me. And if anything, I'm feeling I'm leaving empowered in a positive space to now a space that I don't want to be in. I don't. This isn't for me, but I have to be here for this. So I have to get a birth certificate for my child.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, so I'm there, and I remember when I got in. So my husband, of course, want to check the baby. So my husband stays with me. I'm like, that was the plan. You stay with her. I got myself. Like you just stay with baby. Um, and so we're in the same room, but I just wanted to, he has eyes on her. And so I'm there, and now there's like three women around me. It's like night and day. Three women around me. They're one grabs my hand because she's trying to proceed to hook me up and give me Pitocin.
Okay.
And she grabbed my hand, and I immediately, this is what I'm telling you, this is not my finest hour, but my hormones are over the place. I pull my hand back, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm giving you you need oxytocin because of the bleeding. I'm like, what bleeding? Bleeding? What bleeding? And then I was like, no, I don't want it. She's like, no, but you have to. I said no.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's like, okay, this is weird. So then they come around, and now they're trying to check my the vaginal area. And it's like again, 3-4 women standing above me, like arms, like legs spread. And at this point, I was like, why are there so many of you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? And they were like, oh, I'm upset at this point. And then one of the same midwife was like, oh, sister WP, do you need something like trying to gesture like gas? Do you need something to keep you calm? I
Mm.
said, no, I was calm before I got in here. Y'all are stressing me out. And then
Yeah.
that's when she like put her hands up and she like walked away. It's literally
Mm-hmm.
night and day. And they haven't exactly done anything like to me, right? It's just your energy. It's the
Yeah.
touching. It's the evasiveness. It's the bright light. This is not my home. It's not my space.
Exactly.
I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
So I'm there. I'm dealing with all of that, and I'm trying to remember what else happened with that. Pretty much it was just made like a major fight.
Mm-hmm.
So now at this point, it shows that I tore. But so I should back to my first birth. I did tear, and it was only I think a 2nd-degree tear, but I didn't know what I knew then, and I ended up having it stitched up.
Mm-hmm.
I probably didn't need to do that. Retrospect, that's what I did.
Yeah.
So and I think what ended up happening was the lady who did that, I ended up having scar tissue. So I was dealing with some of that during my postpartum
Mm-hmm.
first one. So I think what ended up happening was during my birth is that my second birth is that I tore, but I tore through the actual
Yeah.
stitches through the tissue.
Yeah.
So it turned into be a third degree tear.
Mm.
So at this point, I'm like, okay, I don't know too much about this. I'm like hitting up all like the people I know, like doula folks, and I have a physiotherapist that I value and I respect. She's also a natural person, but she does a physio side for certain things. So even if you visit her, she doesn't use anything like the tools. So
Mm.
anyways, I spoke to her about it, and I was like, "What do you think about this? Like, is this something I need to take care of, or what?" And her concern with it was about like my anus and those pieces working together. So I mean, I went back and forth, and I said, "I guess I'll do something about it." I can't say that I was fully. I'll say this: I found peace with it,
Mm.
with my decision to do something about that, which is stitch it. Um, but what was happening at the hospital was that they wanted to do it with giving me anesthesia
Oh
or giving me
God.
an epidural. So at this point, I'm in a whirlwind. So they're looking at me and they're like, these are your options. And I remember like listening to these options. I'm like, this doesn't seem right. Like, this got to be a better way to do this. Like, you don't need to do all this just to take care of this, right? So I'm trying to research. I'm trying to ask people. I'm trying to figure everything out. And I'm still in the hospital, and I don't want to be there at this point.
Mm.
So I think at that point I was feeling so overwhelmed. I hadn't eaten at this point, eaten beyond the little snacks I had. Again, my adrenaline, my hormones all over the place. So then I said to the doctor, I was like, listen, and actually I should back up that when the doctor came, remember I only saw her twice and I refused all the other things. So when
Mhm.
she came, she was like, oh, okay. So it happened at home? She has a look on her face like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so fast. And she's like, she can't prove anything. Like,
Mm.
so anyways, so at this point, the doctor's coming to tell me the options. So I say, listen. So I eventually say, fine, and I'm telling you how lost I was at this moment. The story gets interesting. But I was like, I'm not going to epidural. I was like, okay, I'll just do the anesthesia. So I said, I'll do the anesthesia. And then I walked away and I am in tears. I'm bawling. I'm crying. I'm all over the place. My husband's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not okay. I'm not okay with this. I said I was going to do this. I don't think I can do this. I'm like all upset. I don't have peace with this, And I said, and I said to him, I was like, I don't know if it's because I said, I don't know if what I'm feeling is fear or because I'm like, no, God, like you need to get out of here. This isn't what you need to be doing. But I was lost. I couldn't read anything. I couldn't figure out anything. I was all over the place. So the nurse comes in and she's getting ready, like I guess prep me. And then I remember she put on some tights, getting ready to put tights on me. I said, what are you doing? She's like, I need to put this on because of possible blood clots or something. I said, I'm sorry. Can you bring the doctor in? I don't think I'm signing up for.
Mm.
So doctor comes back in and then she wanted me to sign off as I'm reading. And they just want me to sign. I said, no, I need to read this. I'm reading it. And then I read something about fentanyl, right? Things like that. So I said, stop. Listen. I said, listen, I need to talk to the anesthesiologist. I don't know what's going on here. So she brings him in. He comes in. Mind you, I have been on edge most of the time. My
Mm-hmm.
husband advocating for me, but he's calmer.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, the guy comes in and he said, yes, you need something? I said, yes, doctor, I have some questions. I just want you to explain to me again how this process works. And he said to me, I kid you not, he said, are you a doctor? How could you ever understand? And I
No
was like,
way.
I was like, oh, wait a minute. Now this is what my husband jumps up and he's like, what? So now he's
Mm-hmm.
angry. I was like, excuse me? And he was like, you can never understand this. This is what we do. We understand this. And I was like, this is my body. What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, this is my body. And he's like, he said, who gave you the authority to say that your body? I was like, God.
Oh
And
my gosh.
then my husband was like, I don't know, my husband was going back and forth with him about something like, I think my husband was trying to make like a logical analogy to it, like, okay, so I go get my car fixed. I'm not a mechanic, but I can't ask about the procedure and process. Like, what are you
Mm-hmm.
talking about? This is not how this works. This is someone's
Mm-hmm.
body. Your job is to inform. He's
Mm-hmm.
getting upset. And at this point, I'm in shock. So now I'm staring at him like, is this happening? So then my husband at this point, they go back and forth. My husband's like, you know what? Get out. And the doctor at the same time was like, I don't need this. And he leaves out. And then I turned to my husband and I said, that was God. I'm out of here. Discharge me right now. So then he goes out there. He's like, she's done. We're not doing this. And mind you, I spoke to a physiotherapist and I spoke to other people. I was like, I'm going to get it done. But I was like, I don't have a plan. This isn't it.
Yeah.
I'm out. Okay, I'm not doing this here. So now that part got interesting. So now when they come back and they're trying to convince me, oh, it's okay. No, we can. I was like, no, that was confirmation I needed. I'm out here. No, don't thank you. No, thank you. I will go. I'll figure it out for myself. So then the doctor comes back and the original doctor comes back and it's like, okay, you know, pretty much this is the only way I can do this. And fortunately, I'm sorry this can't happen for you. And I was like, listen, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. This is all I know where I am. I'm telling you, thank you for information, and I'm out. So I got discharged, or I signed off to get to. I had to sign something to say that I'm refusing medical this, you know, service advice, and then whatever. So now I'm trying to get ready to go. I'm like dressed up and ready to go, and they're like, okay, but your baby's not discharged. Oh, then discharge her. So now it's like, well, the pediatrician needs to talk to you, and this, that. Okay. Bring him in. So now he comes in and he's like, okay, well, so the thing is that we really advise that she stays here 24, 48 hours. I'm staring at him. It's only been about 6 hours too long for me being in the hospital. So they're like, you know, you need to stay for this. And then I'm like, and we're like, why? And we're being very calm. Why? And he's like, oh, because of the jaundice. I'm like, so what's going on with the jaundice? Is it high? And he's like, well, so this is how he's speaking to me. Well, so there's this threshold, you know, and her numbers are like here. So it's not really on the high end, but it's like on the borderline of high. So it's not high. And he's like, but it's like, mind you, he's not using any numbers with us.
Yeah.
He's speaking in those terms, right?
Yeah.
And then, so my husband, so we're like, it's important that, you know, she stays here. We can advise her, you know, if anything happens, then we can be there to support. My husband's like, so what would happen? Like, if she had these high numbers, what could happen? So he tells us, like, she could go into this, to that, whatever it is. And he's like, okay, thank you for sharing that with me. So I'll be on the lookout. And if we see something like that at home, so we'll brush her in, as, you know, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, you might be sleeping and this, that, and we're like, but won't you all be doing, like,
exactly? You're not going to be watching her 24/7 either.
Exactly. So what are we talking about? So he realized after a while that we were just not budging. Now, mind you, this doctor already got word from the other doctors that these people, you know what I mean, right? So they're ready. And I could hear them out there, like, and I should say, when I initially went in to tell them that I was going to go for the anesthesia or whatever, you could hear them. They were like, oh, she finally agreed. Like, I heard, and that's what probably made me cry. So I felt like I was giving them something. I'm telling you, there was so much going on in that moment.
Yeah.
So anyways, the doctor was like, okay, I tried to advise you, but, you know, he finally gave up. And I said, okay, so he's going to get the paper so we can discharge her. But can you give me that report, please? And then he's like, okay. But he came back with something else, I think, to sign off. I said, yeah, but I still want that report. Okay, I'll send someone with it. Okay, great. So he sends it. I get it finally. I open it. I just look briefly at it. And based on the chart that I see, she is not in any issue zone, right? I'm like, interesting. I just closed it up and then packed our stuff up. And I took an ambulance there. So we took a taxi back.
Yeah.
See my baby, my husband took a taxi back home. So that was the experience of my initial postpartum. After living a very peaceful, serene, like, birth, and then I had to go handle that, which just threw me off. But when I got back home, I saw my son, and he was excited. Like, he's, like, you know, he gets to meet his sister. He said, I felt so much more at peace.
Yeah.
I felt so much more. It's just, unfortunately, it was interrupted.
Yeah. Wow, that's like a whole journey in and of itself, that whole process.
Mhm.
But so then
Mhm.
what did you do about the tear that you had? Did you just
So
leave
the
it and it healed, or what happened?
so yeah, I went back and forth about it, and I decided to go ahead and have it stitched. I decided to do that. That was what I felt the most peace with, because I didn't. I don't think I knew enough information
Mm,
of how to handle it. I think that's, and I wish I had prepared for that more. Like those are things that could have, would have, should have done, but I just really didn't have enough. All I kind of really had was just like other women that may have been in the doula field, which is a whole other thing too, right? They're not the same as like those who kind of follow the physiological process, and also my physio. So
mm.
I think talking to her, I think maybe kind of felt like, well, maybe I should get it done. So I ended up finding a place that would do it with just doing, I guess like the regular, like, I guess the numbing bit
Oh yeah,
there, if you would, you
yeah.
know. So they did it. They did it that way instead. So I at least got it done the way that I wanted to get done. But it was painful afterwards. And see, that's
Mm,
the part that's interesting, because up to that point, I didn't feel any pain. Got that done, no pain. So I was
mm-hmm.
definitely upset about that. And of course, like, well, we can give you. I was like, I'll take Tylenol, whatever. But then they were like, we can give you what is the opioid drugs are? I can't think of the name right now.
Oh,
Um,
I know what you mean.
Oxytocin.
Yeah,
Is
oxys.
that oxytocin? That's it,
Or not
oxy.
oxytocins,
Oxytocin.
oxycontin.
Oxycontin.
Yeah,
There it is. So one of
oxycontin.
those in that family, right?
Yeah.
And and they were gonna give it to me, and I was like, no. I'm like, I said, this will affect my baby. No, it won't. Yes, it will. Like, don't tell me it's not. It's going to. Why would it
Mhm.
not?
Yeah, that's a
So I
high
didn't.
class narcotic drug.
Hello, people. So I didn't take that, and I was in pain for probably a few days. Like, I mean, I was in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a lot of pain, but I refused to take it. So I just dealt with the pain,
Mm,
and um, I would say probably like a week, few days in, I started to feel some relief.
mm,
So that was that journey of it. And I would say with that, I mean, I'm still, I would say I've healed from it. Like, it's not like I don't feel any angst about it at this point.
mm-hmm.
Um, but that was just part of my story. That just had to be part of my story.
Yeah.
Um, for me at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but so it, I would say overall, like, I would say from that free birth experience, from having that moment, and that moment of power, it's now given me a little bit more understanding about how to listen to my body, how
Mm-hmm.
to care for my body. And I'm going
Mm-hmm.
through some stuff right now. Like, I'm working through like some healing of my own.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it's interesting, because there were some things I think from that birth that, because one of the things I did, I haven't taken antibiotics for like 7 years, and I took an antibiotic during that time.
Okay.
I shouldn't have, and I knew that I didn't want to, but I did it anyways. And since then, my body, like my gut health, has been like all over the
Mm,
place. So I'm right.
yeah.
So now I'm trying to work through that now in a natural way, right?
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
but I think it's just like, I know that I can do this. I know what I did during my birth. I know what I
Mm-hmm.
did during my pregnancy. Like, I didn't need these other things in place to help me. So I'm just trying to. I'm still learning
Yeah.
about my body, but I think that experience has uh, jump started that for me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What an experience. I mean, to have such a beautiful, peaceful birth at home and then to go into this system where, you have to, because like you said, you need to get a birth certificate, you need to get a passport for your child because where you're living at present is not, your home. So you need to be able to get back to America at some point with that
Yeah.
child. So you have to,
Yeah.
like you said, play the game in order to get
Yep.
what it is that you need and didn't
Yeah.
make it easy, but
It's not easy.
you
Yeah.
still stood in your power, and didn't like let them give you the oxytocin, and how they just assume like, oh, we're just going to give you this. And I'm sure there are many women that probably did have accidental births at home and are so grateful to go
Yes.
to the hospital and are like, yes, give me this and I'll do this. And they're probably like, oh, this is so like, she's so quote unquote good girl, whereas you come in your power and like, nope, I don't need that, this is not necessary,
Yeah.
don't do this to
They
me.
were so upset. They were
Yeah.
so upset. They were so upset. That was what was interesting. I'm like, God, like, but this is the system, and this is what, and that's the part I got to remind myself. This is what they're going to do because this is what they're trained to do,
Yeah.
and this is what they believe. Some of them, like, generally, you know what I mean. Some of them believe this is it.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm here because the law makes it so I have to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is why I'm here. Otherwise, I would have not gone in. You know. Yeah. Like, that's the. It's it sucks, but that's the part of. But it's part of my story.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I had to teach myself, because when I would speak to wise woman, my friend, right? She came to see me afterwards, and I think one of the things she was helping me try to understand was like don't let that ugly part of it, because it's part of the rule here. Don't let that take away from the beauty that you did have.
Yeah.
Because she's had to deal with the same thing in terms of like she has to go, and so she's experienced it. So she told me, kind of gave me a heads up how this can be. But I think, again, like, that's, I can't let that ugly part erase what was so beautiful about it.
Exactly.
So I had to accept that. I had to, like, not let that, because it was me giving them back power. That's all. I'm giving them back power again. I can't do that. I got to claim what did happen, and it was wonderful. And today I was holding my baby, and at night the person went to sleep, and I was just like telling her happy birthday, and I was telling her that, and it's so cute. I said to her, I was like, while you're speaking, I was like, hey, do you remember? It was me and you a year ago. It was me and you. And she started giggling. I don't know if she was understood me. Because that's something I could tell her, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is possible. And then I could even tell her about the experiences that I did have post like that, right? And let her know, like, they don't have to have that control over you, right? And then also the fact that I got stitched, that could be a lesson for her. Make sure you have all the knowledge that you need, and also just know that you can trust yourself too, right? Like, so I'm hoping that there's some lessons for her in this.
Yeah.
She can even do better than I did.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to speak to the two tears that you had. This is quite often that it happens if a woman tears in her first birth and then gets stitched up. It's not like a guaranteed that if you have your second baby you will tear, but sometimes if you do have your second baby and you tear, it's actually the body's way of healing that trauma that had happened from being sutured the first time. So not to say that you getting sutured the second time was a bad choice. Like you said, you made the choice that was best for you at that moment.
Right.
But it is sometimes a very like physiologic way of the body trying to heal that previous trauma to the vaginal canal or wherever your tear was, so that it can bring itself back into the natural healing in a physiologic way, so that so that the layers of the tissue can kind of heal in their more natural way, opposed to being kind of forced in their way when it gets sutured, because it's not really lined up as it's meant to.
Not lined up.
Yeah, but so either way, like, not saying you did it wrong, because like I said, you did it in the way that was best for you in those moments. But just for the other women listening, like, if you do tear after you've had sutures the first time, if you feel comfortable, I would say it's best to just let that tear heal more naturally. We'll come back into a better state of healing, and then doing extra healing practices after that tear has fully healed, like doing yoni steaming, using castor oil, massaging the scar tissue in there so that it doesn't create adhesions, is a better way to heal that area, opposed to just going for the sutures and then kind of leaving it.
And that's a good point, though, because I think that even after, and if I speak to the fact that, like, after the birth, and I had that tear, if you will, the second tear, for about a few days before I even went to have it sutured
Mm-hmm.
up.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't feel a thing. So that was the part I kept kind of battling. I'm like, but I feel fine. Like I feel great. Like I feel, you know, and maybe that's exactly probably what was happening, right? And then I closed it back up when it didn't need to be closed
Mm-hmm.
at that time, right? It needed to do its own thing. Like I said, like I come to peace with it now, but I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think there's a better way of handling that for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that other women, my daughter, like know that you don't have to do that. And I would
Mm-hmm.
like to learn more about that because that does make a lot of sense, probably to what I was feeling
Yeah.
after. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just another piece of learning, So
Yep.
yeah, just another
Yep.
piece to your story, as you said. So if you have another
It
baby
is.
at some point and maybe you'll tear again, and then maybe this time you'll just be happy to leave it and let it do its thing,
Yeah.
yoni steaming, and let that tissue just come back into its own way.
Come back into its own way, which is
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you
Hmm.
sharing that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories. Like they're just so it's so wonderful to hear these stories of women birthing in power. And I love how you mentioned when you're speaking of your first birth, especially for women of color, for Black women, usually the only stories that we hear are Black women dying in the hospital because they're not being fully cared for. Black women's babies are being abused and taken away, and medical kidnapping,
Yeah.
and all of these really, really negative, traumatic birth stories. So
Correct.
it is so important to hear a story like yours from a woman of color, from a Black woman of color, that it's like,
Yeah.
I didn't have that experience because I chose to
Neither.
make my birth different. I chose to go through these things and not have this fear of what could happen. I didn't let that happen for me. I chose to do something
Right.
different, and I was able to have these really beautiful pregnancy and birth experiences. Yes, granted, the postpartum experience for the second was not as ideal, but that was what you had to do
Yeah.
in the place that you're living in. But,
Yeah.
it is so important for us as Black women to hear positive stories of birth, to hear us as Black women standing in our power and not letting the medical model, not letting these medical quote unquote
Mhm.
authorities make decisions for us that don't benefit us
Mhm.
in any way, shape, or form, only
No,
benefit
it's about
them, and
them.
then leads to our
Yeah.
demise. So
Mhm.
yeah, so
Mhm. Absolutely.
yeah.
And I do appreciate these spaces. I really, really do because of that. Like I don't. My initial birth probably turned out the way it did, or pregnancies, because I was fearful. Because that's only stories that I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, my doula was one who actually told me, you need to listen to the positive ones, because I was too busy with negative ones.
Mm-hmm.
But once I started doing more of that, I think, yeah, it changes your whole narrative about everything, right? And then also I learned more about the medical system with birth, through like different documentaries and things, right? But it's not about you, it's about them, and it's not for me. Yeah. So and that's even where I'm at now. Even I'm a doula, but I don't know if I really have the heart in me to go back to a hospital for to witness. I just don't. I think I've been a little bit transformed now. I'm still learning, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's very different. I think once I've now gone away from that, I don't know if I can go back.
Yeah.
Because it's not natural. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Birth is something we've been doing for years,
Yeah.
centuries. Like,
Yeah.
so,
Since the beginning of
uh,
time. Yeah.
beginning of time, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that's amazing to me. It's interesting because when I tell people after conversation, and you're like, "Wait, you did it at home?" Like,
Mm.
yeah. Like, so, like, you had a midwife? No. Wait, so your husband did it? No, it was me. What
Yeah.
do you mean? He was there, yes, but he didn't do what he didn't. I
Yeah.
mean, he supported me. He was supportive,
Yeah.
but did he do it? No. But it's amazing how that's what we say, but not
Yeah.
like you did it.
Yeah, people still won't even come to the realization that a woman can just birth her baby. It's like, oh, okay, well, a medical midwife wasn't there, so somebody else birthed your baby. It's like,
Someone
no,
else did it.
I did it. It's so hard for people to have that run through their head that like, oh wow, a woman could actually birth her baby in her power and be okay with it. It's
Yeah. it's natural. It's natural. The
Mm-hmm.
medical field made it seem as if it's something that is unnatural and we are
Exactly.
not able to do. Like, so
Mhm.
I was very pleased with that experience. I would encourage it
Mhm.
for like really anyone, right? I mean, if that's something that you could do, but I also know that every woman is, they're not there yet,
Yeah.
right? Or there,
Hmm.
so
Totally.
I'm mindful about that too.
Hmm.
But I'm grateful for it. There's
Hmm.
experience. I'm grateful that it was with my daughter. I just hope
Hmm.
that she will have that in plus some, like more, even the way that I had it, right?
Absolutely.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's already encoded in her memory, just because you had
talking
her
about
born at home in that beautiful way. So she'll already have that. And like you said, if she wants to become a mother when she's older, she'll already know. And you'll tell her this beautiful birth story. So that's the narrative that she's going to go with, is that, oh, my
yes,
mom had me at home in a beautiful way, so I can have my babies at home in a
I had
beautiful
baby
way.
at home.
Yeah.
Inshallah, that'd be amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be so amazing. Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, wow, Ashley, thank you so, so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to share on your two pregnancy, birth, or postpartum experiences before we wrap up?
um, no, just other than I just gotta say, just I think rebirthing has just given me another outlook on the idea of health, and I'm still learning what that means. But
Yeah.
I would say healing. I'm trying to find a path for healing in all areas of my life. So, and I think rebirthing is what inspired that.
Yeah.
So it can
Beautiful.
transform lots of things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much. Um,
Thank you.
if there are any women that would like to reach out to you personally and speak to you a bit more deep a bit more in depth about your story, is
Yeah.
there a way that they could do that?
Yes. So I am on IG, Instagram. So my handle is birth to rebirth. So just spelled out BIRTHTOREBIRTH. So birth to rebirth. So you can
Perfect.
find me there. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much. I'm so grateful
Thank
for the
you.
story to be shared. Thank you, sisters, so much for listening to this episode of the Free Birthing Color podcast. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one in a primal activation session, donate to the podcast, or to have your story featured here or in the blog, go to primalwomanportal.com for all the information to do so. Did you want to connect with our guest speaker? You can find all her information linked within the show notes. And if you have time, please subscribe, write a review, and tell a friend to have a listen so that this podcast and these stories of women birthing in their total power can be shared far and wide. Don't forget to check out the show notes for information on the Earth Daughters Women's Festival, the Breach Without Borders workshop, and much more. New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so stay tuned for the next amazing story to be shared on any platform that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on, or watch these episodes on the Free Birthing in Color YouTube page. And remember, your voice and your story matters. So if you're a woman of color or an Indigenous woman who's had a wild pregnancy and or birth outside of the medical system, submit your story, because it's so important that your voice is heard and celebrated in your radical journey of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.